Hi there, welcome to Hevo. In this video, we'll look at the REST API source, what it is used for, when to choose it, and how the connection works at a high level. The REST API source allows you to ingest data into Hevo from sources that provide data through a REST API. Hevo sends a request to an API's address or URL, also called an endpoint, and the source sends data back, usually in JSON format. Every time the pipeline runs, Hevo sends a request to the configured API endpoint, retrieves the data from the API response, and loads it into your destination. REST API works well for internal tools, custom-built applications, or third-party services that provide API access. However, if Hevo already offers a dedicated connector for your application, that option is usually easier to set up and maintain than REST API. On the other hand, the REST API source gives you more flexibility and control over how data is requested and extracted. Now let's walk through the key steps to configure a REST API source. First, create a new pipeline and select REST API as the source. Now, choose the HTTP method. In most cases, this will be GET, which is commonly used to retrieve data. Some source APIs require POST, especially when the request includes a body. If you selected POST, provide the request body. This contains additional information the API needs in order to return the data, and it is usually provided in JSON format or as form data in key value pairs, depending on what the API expects. Hevo will use these settings each time the pipeline runs to send the request to the API. Select the method based on your source API's requirements. Next, enter the endpoint URL. This is the exact API address Hevo will call to fetch the data. If the API requires authentication credentials, such as an API key, bearer token, or OAuth, you configure that in the authentication section. If the API expects additional information in the request, like custom headers or query parameters, you define those in the headers and query parameters section. Next, you configure the data replication path. This is a JSON path expression that tells Hevo where the list of records is located within the API response. If the API returns results in multiple pages, you can configure pagination. This simply means the API sends data in smaller batches instead of all records at once, and Hevo follows the defined paging rules to retrieve all pages. After configuring these sections, click Finish Setup. Hevo will then automatically call the API based on your pipeline schedule and load the data into your destination. One important thing to know is that REST API sources do not automatically track only new or updated records. Hevo refetches data from the beginning and identifies changes during processing. In the next videos, we'll walk through each step in detail. Setting up authentication, adding headers and query parameters, choosing the data replication path, configuring pagination, and writing JSON path expressions for your REST API source. To learn more or explore other features in Hevo, visit docs.hevodata.com. Thanks for watching.